Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. I remember when we used to sit in a government yard in Trenchtown. Even if you aren't a reggae fan, there's no doubt in my mind that you've come in contact with these lyrics at some point in time. Bob Marley is my favorite songwriter by far, with all of his compositions conveying deep-seated, emotive, and richly descriptive lyrical paintings of his feelings. But even from among all his numerous great works, I consider No Woman No Cry to be his magnum opus, at least from a storytelling point of view. It's a love song in which Bob Marley poured out his nostalgic memories of the toughest and ironically sweetest times of his epic journey to superstardom. Life, they say, is a journey, and every single one of us has looked back on rivers that we've had to cross, on mountains that we conquered on the way to becoming who we are. For Bob Marley, No Woman No Cry was his cathartic recollection of his rock-bottom moments as a homeless youngster in Trenchtown, a young man with nothing except the love of his woman, his friends in the ghetto, and a burning desire to make something of his life through music, reminiscing about sharing simple meals like cornmeal porridge, as well as good friends had and good friends lost along the way. The song is a glorious celebration of life and hope in the face of untold hardship that I believe most of us can relate with. It was Bob Marley's breakthrough single as a solo artist after the original Wailers had collapsed, and is indeed one of his best known. It's not only his most popular, but I strongly believe the most covered of all his incredible songs, with numerous versions by rock, reggae, pop, disco, as well as hip-hop artists over the years. But aside from how amazing the song is on its own, the most awesome fact was its legacy and amazing backstory as it relates to Bob and a man called Vincent Ford, a dear friend of the Tuff Gong and a person more than deserving of being called a saint. After Rita Marley, he was indeed the next main inspiration behind the song, and interestingly, it was even written in his bedroom as Bob had been a beneficiary of Ford's big kind heart. Bob would in return use that song as a vehicle to give back to Trenchtown the same way that neighborhood had given to him. Though many years down the line, it would become embroiled in a legal tussle that raged on for decades after the Tuff Gong had left this world. Today's story is as much about Vincent Ford as it is about Bob Marley. So without further ado, let's take a look at the incredible tale of No Woman No Cry. The song was the second track on side 1 of 1974's Natty Dread album. It was the first album that Bob had put out without Peter Tosh and Bunny Wailer, and is what launched him into the reckoning as a solo artist and global icon. It was 9 tracks of cutting-edge Rastafarian energy, but No Woman No Cry was the most deeply personal one. The lyrics told the story of the period in his life when he was homeless and grinding as an upcoming musician at Coxsone Studio One. He would hustle during the day and sleep on the floor at a soup kitchen in a government yard in Trenchtown that was owned and run by his dear friend Vincent Ford. Ford was a paraplegic, having lost both of his legs to diabetes when quite young, but was well known in the area for his charitable works and philanthropy of feeding the poorest of the poor, Bob Marley inclusive. In fact, the Tuff Gong testified later in life that he would have starved to death if not for the food from Ford's soup kitchen. And that soup kitchen was also the first place where Bob and Rita Marley shared their first intimate moments when they began dating, though she would later force Bob to come and stay with her at her aunt's house. Within the next year, he would marry Rita, leave Studio One, and travel to the US to work and raise money to take his musical dreams with the Wailers to the next level. Fast forward 8 years later, the Wailers trio was no more, and Bob was working on the music for what would become the Natty Dread album. One day, he was hanging out with Vincent at his flat, in the same government yard that he had lived at some years before, and the two friends were reminiscing about those difficult yet magical days, and Bob got inspired to write No Woman No Cry. Till this day, it's not very clear if Ford actually wrote any lyrics on the song, but Bob would credit him as the songwriter. An incredible gift, as Bob knew the song would be a big hit and wanted his friend Ford to be the one getting all his royalties checks. You see, by then, Bob had become a veteran of the music business and now knew all the intricacies surrounding intellectual property. It was his own way of repaying his dear friend and also a means of supporting the soup kitchen which had fed him at his lowest points and was also of huge benefit to Trenchtown. And of course, as Bob had said, the song became a monster hit and indeed among his most iconic tracks. A masterpiece of songwriting and instrumentation, ably backed up by the angelic harmonies of the I3s. Bob would also credit Ford as a writer of 2 other songs on his next studio album, Rastaman Vibration, in roots rock reggae and positive vibration. but No Woman No Cry was the crown jewel. Apart from its big sales figures, it's over the years become Bob's most sampled and covered song, and one of the first covers was by 1970s disco group Boney M that released their own version in 1976. From South African musician Hugh Masekela to US rock group Pearl Jam to hip-hop acts like Naughty by Nature and the Fugees, as well as singer and pianist Nina Simone, these artists and many more have put out their own versions of that incredible song, all translating to very pretty royalty payments in favor of Vincent Ford, which kept his soup kitchen up and buzzing after Bob had passed away and even after Ford himself died in 2008 at the age of 68 from complications of hypertension and the diabetes which had plagued him for most of his life. And Bob's masterstroke saw No Woman No Cry escape the bitter legal battle that broke out over his estate after his death between Island Records, the Marley family, and Chris Blackwell for almost 40 years. However, in 2014, Cayman Music, owned by Johnny Nash and Danny Sims, which Bob Marley had been signed to before joining Island Records, sued the Marley family and Chris Blackwell for the rights to a few songs that Bob had credited to other people, including No Woman No Cry. Eventually, the courts found out that Cayman Music had no rights to the song, but unfortunately, they also held that Vincent Ford didn't have those rights either, as it had been proved that it was indeed written by Bob Marley, and the song's ownership would revert to the Marley family. But of course, that fact didn't undo the magnificent good and charitable works as Bob had designed and envisioned at Vincent Ford's soup kitchen. And that gesture by Bob is to me among one of the most striking examples of his amazing philanthropy and his heartwarming desire to be a force for good in his community. I stand to be corrected, but I don't think any other artist in history has ever intentionally given away the rights to his most popular breakout song. Further evidence that Robert Nesta Marley was truly one of a kind. No Woman No Cry is not only regarded as one of Bob's greatest songs, but generally rated as one of the greatest songs across all genres of all time. And confirming what we all knew, it was counted in Rolling Stone magazine's list as number 37 in its countdown of the 500 greatest songs of all time. It was conceived as a love song for Rita Marley in honor of the humble beginnings, became an anthem that celebrated life despite crushing adversity, and would take on a life of its own as a vehicle to help people that were in the same situations as Bob was at his lowest point in life. Like most music fans, I've got a bias for studio versions of songs over live in concert versions. But with No Woman No Cry, I was blown away by the superb 7-minute version of the Bob Marley and the Wailers Live at the Lyceum album from 1975. This inspirational, soulful, and heartwarming song of encouragement and reassurance is, in my humble opinion, another wonderful example of how suffering and hardships can inspire creations of unspeakable beauty. A masterpiece that reassures us all that no matter the situation, everything is gonna be alright. So there you have it. Thank you for watching the video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.